Wow, I can't believe it's already been 4 years. FGO's anniversary is coming fast, and it's bringing a highly requested servant. Hello everyone, Soberoni of G&A Reviews here, with a servant spotlight for Chaldea's cutest navigator, and the best Da Vinci Rider. We'll be examining her stats and skills, as well as going over pointers on how to utilize her effectively, and an overall grade, comparing her to how she stacks up to the other 5-star servants. So if you're ready to witness Da Vinci's true power, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and ring my bell, so that you can catch all of these spotlight videos as they go up, and you can help out the channel. Now, onto Da Vinci's stats. Da Vinci has a max HP of 14,112 and a max attack of 10,883. Her HP is the second highest among all Rider servants, however, her attack is well below average for her class. Compared to the other 5-star servants overall, Da Vinci retains an above average HP stat, while her attack is on the low end. When it comes to her command cards, Da Vinci has 4 hits on her quick card, 4 hits on her arts, 2 hits on her buster, and 4 hits on her extra card. She has an NP gain rate of 0.49% and a star rate of 9%. Overall, Lily's stats are significantly tilted more toward defense, which is typically more in line with a support rather than a farming or DPS servant. Lily has exceptional NP gain due to the high hit counts on her arts card and slightly above average star generating thanks to her strong quick and extra cards. Taking a look at her skills, Da Vinci Lily's first skill is Golden Rule Body rank EX. This skill grants her 3 turns of debuff immunity. It also recovers her HP between 500 and 1000 every turn for 3 turns, and charges her NP gauge between 10% and 20% every turn for 3 turns, both depending on level. Her second skill is Excel Turn rank B. This skill grants her 1 hit of evasion and increases her crit damage for 1 turn between 30 and 50% depending on level. And finally, her last skill is Dream Upon the Stars rank D. This skill increases the party's NP damage for 3 turns between 20 and 30% depending on level. It also charges the party's NP gauge by 10% and increases their overcharge by 1 stage for 1 turn. As for her passives, Lily Da Vinci has Riding rank B, which increases her quick card effectiveness by 8%, Territory Creation rank C, which increases her arts card effectiveness by 6%, and Overhaul rank E, which increases her debuff resistance by 20%, and her star generating by 20% as well. Moving on to her deck and Noble Phantasm, Da Vinci Lily has an Arts Buster deck with Quick, Arts, Buster, and an Arts Noble Phantasm. Her Noble Phantasm is Beautiful Journey. It's an AoE arts attack that deals damage to all enemies, with between a 450 and 750% damage modifier, depending on level. It also increases the party's NP gauge by 20%, and it increases her own arts card effectiveness for 1 turn between 20 and 40%, depending on overcharge. Thankfully, Da Vinci Lily doesn't require any super annoying bronze mats, like bones or stakes, in order to ascend. For level ascension, she requires 8 homunculus babies, 10 horseshoes, 15 ancient gears, and 5 scarabs. Homunculus babies can be farmed at the Waitley residence in Salem, where they have a 40% drop rate. Horseshoes have a 44% drop rate at the Land of the Void in Camelot. Ancient gears drop at Barrel Tower in Shinjuku with a 46% drop rate, and scarabs have a 12% drop rate at the Great Temple in Camelot. For skill leveling, Da Vinci needs 15 horseshoes, 15 homunculus babies, 15 reactor cores, and 10 eggs per skill. Reactor cores have a 20% drop rate at the prison camp in Lost Belt 3, while eggs have a drop rate of 12% at the Vol in Lost Belt 4. Da Vinci Lily may look cute and sweet on the outside, but there's a monster lurking underneath that smile, or at the very least a very powerful servant. Stat-wise, Da Vinci Lily may seem underwhelming at first. After all, her HP, attack, and star generating range from bad to slightly above mediocre at best. But she is packing where it counts, NP gain. You see, Da Vinci is the first in a long line of arts-focused AoE servants that we have coming up. So for her, being able to spam out her Noble Phantasm is everything. And Lily's NP gain is through the roof, thanks in large part to her high hit down arts cards, her arts-based deck, and the decent passive in Territory Creation. But it doesn't stop there. Da Vinci's active skills help with her NP gain as well. Her first skill, Golden Rule Body, grants her 3 turns of debuff immunity as well as a heal and NP charge. This skill is stacked. First of all, defensively it's quite strong, since it does give a decent recurring heal and also has a 3-turn debuff immunity, which means that Da Vinci doesn't ever have to worry about stuns or NP seals or anything else that could slow her down. Offensively though, this skill provides a free 20% NP charge every turn, which is tremendous for topping off Da Vinci's NP gauge right after she Noble Phantasms. Da Vinci already gets a massive NP refund from her Noble Phantasm, so the extra 20% charge puts her over the top and makes it extremely easy and consistent for her to loop her Noble Phantasm 3 times in a row. Da Vinci's third skill, Dream Upon the Stars, is no less useful. It's a 10% NP charge for the whole party, and it increases the party's NP overcharge by 1 stage, as well as increasing their NP damage by 30%. So basically, this skill is a super buff tactics that also charges the team's NP gauge by a bit, and because of that, it's Da Vinci's most versatile skill. The NP damage buff is huge, not only because 30% is a good number, but because it stacks multiplicatively with Da Vinci's arts buff from her Noble Phantasm, and because it lasts for 3 turns, which means that Da Vinci can launch 3 full power NPs without any drop off in her damage. This can also be a great support skill in some comps because it helps her allies NP quicker, and it also increases overcharge, which is a tremendously rare skill. It sounds trivial to only increase by 1 stage, but it can have a noticeable effect in certain team comps, like for example getting extra NP charge from Tamamo, or even an extra hit of invincibility from Castoria. And of course, it also buffs Da Vinci's own arts card effectiveness from her own NP. Finally, Da Vinci has a solid defensive skill in Excel Turn. This is a 1-hit evade that also buffs crit damage by 50%. On the downside, it is only 1 hit, not 1 turn, so it is weaker than most evades. But 1 hit is all you need to survive an enemy Noble Phantasm anyway, and it makes up for it by having a ridiculously short 4-turn cooldown. The crit buff is also significant since as a rider, Da Vinci is going to crit very easily due to her high star weight, and because the cooldown is so low, it's not an issue to use this skill offensively for extra damage as well as defensively. For skill leveling, without a doubt you need to level Golden Rule first because it is the crux of Lily's entire kit, and it enables all kinds of looping shenanigans, followed by the NP buff for more damage, and then the evade last. Da Vinci's Noble Phantasm is an AoE arts attack, of course. It buffs her arts cards for 1 turn before damage, and it also charges the entire party's NP gauge by 20%. As you can see, with Da Vinci, no amount of NP charge is enough. Offensively, this Noble Phantasm isn't all that strong, but it has an insane amount of utility. First off, the party-wide NP charge is great. Combined with her third skill, this means that Da Vinci can charge the party's NP gauge by 30%. But furthermore, this Noble Phantasm can be looped, so the entire party is getting anywhere between 40 to 80% NP charge on average, just from Da Vinci alone, including Da Vinci herself. Between Golden Rule and her own NP, Da Vinci gives herself a free 40% NP charge every turn right off the bat, and that's before factoring in the NP refund that she gets from hitting enemies with her Noble Phantasm, as well as the high amount of NP gain that she gets from her arts cards and crits. In short, Da Vinci Lily is all about looping, and it's hard for her not to loop with so much free NP charge from so many sources. And as I mentioned, as a rider, her arts cards crit very often, which gives her another big burst of NP charge. With the right support, it is possible to literally Noble Phantasm every turn with Da Vinci Lily. Not only that, but Da Vinci can work as a massive NP battery for the whole team, by constantly charging everyone's NP gauge through her Noble Phantasm and her third skill, which makes her particularly strong when paired with other NP batteries like Tamamo. So if you haven't noticed by now, Da Vinci Lily specializes and excels in NP looping, but she can also work quite well defensively in stall teams thanks to her low cooldown evade, her HP regen, and her debuff immunity, so she's pretty tanky. Having high star absorb and a low cooldown crit buff also makes her viable as an arts crit DPS. So there are very few flaws in Da Vinci's kit. However, one thing she does suffer from is low damage. Unfortunately, while her Noble Phantasm can be spammed near infinitely, it's also very weak, so she is going to struggle when killing off high HP enemy waves at lower NP levels. And considering that farming is her main job, this is a major weakness. Thankfully though, this weakness can be overcome with proper team setup. And there is no shortage of arts buffers. For farming, it's best to pair Da Vinci with arts supports who can simultaneously buff her damage and charge her NP gauge, like Tamamo, Paracelsus, and Nero Bride. Paracelsus is a phenomenal budget art support for 3-turn farming, since he can buff Lily's NP gain drastically, while Tamamo and Bride provide excellent damage steroids and versatility, especially once Bride gets her upcoming buff. For longer fights against bosses or tougher enemies, it's best to utilize Da Vinci's abilities as a crit DPS, and you can do so by pairing her with art supports who focus on providing her with crit stars while also providing NP gain, like Lan Ling, Caster Gill, and Mozart. Lan Ling is the complete package, providing arts buffs, crit stars, and direct NP charge, which makes him ideal for more balanced teams with Da Vinci, while Mozart and Castergill provide stronger, more focused arts buffs and star generating, which makes them better choices if you're trying to maximize burst damage. Da Vinci's Bondcraft Essence is Beautiful Journey. It increases the party star absorb rate on their arts cards by 100%. This can be useful for some niche arts crit teams that lack star absorb, but for the most part it's best to use CEs that maximize Da Vinci's NP gain or grant her starting NP charge, like Painting Summer, Sign of a Smiling Face, Magical Girl of Sapphire, or Kaleidoscope, since these are all going to make looping with her much more easy. For crit Vinci, go with CEs that buff NP gain and crit damage like Another Ending, Heading to Treefoss, Annual General Meeting, or Trick or Treatment. In the future, I recommend the upcoming Welcome Bunny CE, as it buffs arts cards, crit damage, and even generates stars every turn. As for command codes, Illusionary Command Seal is a great one to use, as it buffs arts card star absorb, which makes it easier for Da Vinci to crit and loop. Overall, Da Vinci is an exceedingly powerful servant in her role. Her ability to constantly loop her Noble Phantasm is nearly unrivaled, and she's able to farm very effectively in just about any arts team. She provides excellent support for the team as well through her constant NP battery, and her skill set is flexible enough to not only make her one of the best farmers in the game, but a decent DPS or tank for boss fights as well. Just about her only weakness is the crippling lack of damage on her Noble Phantasm, which makes her very dependent on support buffs to clear some of the tougher enemy waves. So all in all, Da Vinci Rider gets an A+ from me. Like I said, she's probably the best pure NP looper in the game in my opinion, at least in terms of consistency, not power. And she provides so much support to the team while also being flexible and effective. So whether you're a new player or you're a veteran, you're going to get a lot of mileage out of Da Vinci Rider. And those are my thoughts on Da Vinci. I don't normally recommend going for NP2 or higher on most servants, since I don't think it's all that necessary most of the time, but in Da Vinci's case, if you do plan on utilizing her a lot, I would suggest going for at least NP2, because she seriously needs that help with extra NP damage to be effective. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like and consider subscribing if you really enjoyed it. Join the party over at our Discord, chill with us on Twitch, and follow us on Twitter, all linked in the description down below. And I'll see you all in the next Servant Spotlight. Soberoni out. Later.